and the amazing Monica Henderson. And there's also a third person here. Regina is joining us from Chicago. We are super excited. We're actually thrilled to be doing this. Like, we're totally off the cuff here. We don't have any kind of pretenses, no script, no spiritual jargon. We're just getting real. And so, Monica, tell us a little bit more about the show.
Yeah, this I love that we decided to do this because Jennifer and I were having a conversation and we were like, oh my gosh, like sometimes when we get into these conversations with other spiritual people, they kind of get in the ethers about like spirituality and like all this, the modalities, and they're so high in the ethers that we can't find a practical application or a practical conversation about it. And I was like, wouldn't it be really cool if we could like just plain speak spirituality? And she's like, I know, right? Like I really want to bring it to people in a tangible way. And so I thought, like, why not, let's talk about it and get some other spiritual beings involved. And so that's how we ended up here, and that's how Regina got here with us. So Regina, tell us a little bit about what you do in the spiritual realm.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on, and I'm really excited about this show, and it's something that I fully appreciate and agree with too. Right? Like I can get up in the ethers, absolutely, but it's really great to just be able to talk as people, right here in this 3D form. So I'm Regina Curtis, and I bring together astrology, intuition, and creativity for entrepreneurs. And so we bring, that together with business and really helping people to align with their, like how they naturally do them, right? Like your ways of knowing and your ways of being, and bringing that into your business, and then bringing in that intuition and creativity and using astrology as a tool as well.
Yes, love it. Okay, so this show is going to be so off the chain and off the cuff that no one knows what the topic is today until we pull it out of a bowl. But because we're not bowl ready yet, I have done one of these numbers and selected from a list of, Jennifer, I think we ended up with how many? 37 different topics
At
in
least.
spirituality?
Yes, yes.
So it is literally random, but the job is to answer these three questions about this particular modality from your particular area of expertise and experience without going in the ethers, keeping it really practical, really everyday oriented, and not too heady, right? We're just going to stay deep in the heart of it all, right? Okay. So today's topic is yoga.
Yoga.
Okay. Awesome.
Yoga.
Yoga. So this ended up on our list because yoga is something that everyone is always talking about. It's a fad, right? Like it's like very popular. It's very trendy. There's a whole line of clothing that goes along with it, and people are walking around saying namaste as though they're like super deep. But why is yoga even considered a spiritual practice? That's what we're going to dive into today. So the question for the two of you is, why is yoga something that should be a part of a spiritual practice?
Very good. Very good. My mind goes all over the place because there's so many different types of yoga. So, like, how do you even start, right? Like you
Yeah.
said, there's the yoga that's kind of become trendy and mainstream, and there's a whole line of clothing that goes with it. And there's the yoga where people dress up differently, and act differently and have different postures and different ways of doing yoga. And I remember when I was a few years ago, it was pre pandemic, I think it was in 2019 actually. I was at an ashram in Bali, and they take yoga very seriously there in a very different way, and they they're not so fond of us Westerners in the way that we view yoga, because for them it's so spiritual. It is such a sacred, ancient text and practice. and goes really, really deep, you know. And they showed this video. I remember seeing the video and actually bawling my eyes out because at that point I've had so much soul opening and just different ways of thinking and being in the world, just based on what I was experiencing and being around these amazing people that take life and live it in such a, almost like living life as a prayer, you know, where there's offerings that go on and just different things. And I was bawling because I just saw how commercialized and trendy yoga had become, and realized where the spirituality and the sacredness of it got lost, you know, where we're not so aware in the West here about those sacred texts and the reflections and the other ways of experiencing and doing yoga. And then I met this really amazing person, Chara Rodriguez. She does soul path yoga. And I really love that practice because she is in New Jersey. So she is in the western part of the world. And what I love about it is that it's so reflective and there's gentle movement. She doesn't do any kind of postures. And I love it because it's more my pace, where the like 2/3 of it is actually on the floor, you know, lying down and just being in that space. So that's what works for me. But like I said, my mind goes all over the place because there are so many different ways that we can experience and do yoga. I don't know. Do you guys do yoga? Is that part of your practice?
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So how do you do it? What does it look like on a daily basis, weekly basis? What is it for you as a routine?
It differs for me, honestly, really depending on what it is that I need and what um my access is. You know, like I too I've gone on a yoga retreat in Bali, and I've also, like, you know, done yoga on my floor in my living room or my kitchen sometimes, honestly. um
Mhm.
it's I have a very varied practice, but actually the answer to the question, and I don't know, Monica, if you want to answer first or if you want to answer and then
Nope,
um,
go for it.
okay, I'll just keep going. So the answer to the question for me really is kind of a riff off of what you were saying, and talking about my practice being varied. So the reason I think that it should be a part of everyone's spiritual practice is because it gets you in your body. And no matter what kind of practice you're doing, whether it's called, you know, the different names that it might be, um, even those more westernized, like, what is it, like core yoga, and you know, the ones that are really just about like how much can you move,
It's
how fast
3:30.
can you move. um, the universe is speaking, or your computer. Um, it really is about bringing you present in that moment in your body, right? And I've done some, like, really on the very far end of the spiritual spectrum, where we're meditating and, you know, saying om, and maybe there's some sound healing happening and a lot of other things. There are ones that are more posture driven, but regardless, when once you start moving, once you get on that mat and you're in a class or you're laying on your kitchen floor, whatever it is, right? You're actively moving your body in a conscious way. And my understanding of yoga from the spiritual sense too is that, you know, the final pose where you're laying on the floor, just laying there, right, is when the most benefit comes in, because you've moved your body. And yes, you get some benefit from that, but what you've done is you've gotten out of your head, you've gotten out of the million things that you need to do that day, you've gotten out of the past and the future, and you're present in that moment, and you get to receive wisdom, right, insights from your higher knowing, or wisdom from your body that's like, girl, I'm tired. So there's so much benefit there. And so that's why I think that no matter what the practice is, and yeah, there's a benefit in repetition, but there's also benefit in variety. So whatever it is, just bringing that movement and that presence in your body is where the benefit is.
Yeah, I just like to add that also the last pose is my favorite pose of the whole thing.
Yes.
It's never long enough for me. I think that's one of the things in the Western world that, like,
Yeah.
when I went to Bali and was doing, you know, yoga, the final pose, it's called shavasana for those who don't know,
Hmm.
but the final pose was much longer, and we would stay in that and receive, and it was so powerful. But in the West, a lot of times it's like, oh, the next class is coming in, you got to go, 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 and
Mm-hmm.
to me, that's a shame.
Yeah. And so yoga is a part of my own spiritual practice as well. Um, and also a part of my workout routine as well. So I use it for all of the purposes. But the way that I view kind of like spirituality and just being a human in general is like we're kind of like a balance of the three essences of who we are, right? We're our mental body, we're our physical body, and we're our spiritual body. And many times when I'm talking to people about kind of self care and like, how do you care for yourself? We really do have to understand that there are three separate ways that we're doing that. And for our mind, we have like, puzzles and learning and education, and that's how we strengthen our mind, right? And then the physical part, we do exercises and eat right to fuel the body, and that strengthens the body. And then for our emotions, right, is our spiritual practice. And I've always correlated it to like three separate bodies working together to exist as one person. And so, because I had that correlation, yoga, then I had an understanding of it that I was never really explained that that's what it was. But I realized that it was like, okay, meditation just in general is really about kind of extreme focus, right? And being able to kind of block out all the other things. And so that practice of learning how to do that is more about um, when life hits and I have to be focused and I have to block out all the things. I now know how to do that. And so when it came to yoga, I was like, oh, this is about pain and pain tolerance, right? And being able to breathe through difficult physical moments so that I can cope, right? So I can cope with whatever is happening in my body so that I can ease, not tense up everything, right? When we feel pain, we tense everything up. We're like, ugh, right? But like in that moment of like trying to counterbalance your arms and your legs and your thighs shaking and all of that, you still are, they're like, no, 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 focus on your breathing, right? And it helped me understand that, oh, this is like the exercise like of experiencing my physical body and my emotional body together at the
Mm-hmm.
same time. And so how I know it works and why I am a raving fan of yoga is because I am bionic. I have 10 screws in my ankle, so me and Wolverine are kin now. I got a
Whoa!
lot of metal in my skin.
Didn't know that.
Wow!
Yeah, I was roller skating and I rolled my ankle
Mm.
and broke my ankle in three places on two planes. So I had two bones
Ooh.
that had breaks on them. So much so that when we got in the X-ray room, the technician left me on the table and was like, "Girl, you didn't did it. It is all the way broke." Didn't even wait for me to go to the room to give me the to give me the news about it. He
It's
was like,
all the way
"It's
through.
all the way broke."
Wow.
But I remember when I was on my way to the hospital, I was in excruciating pain. As a matter of fact, when I went to stand up from rolling the ankle, I started to black out a bit. And so I had them sit me back down and then gathered myself a bit. And then I had to like deal with like this excruciating pain. And so I'm in the car and I was like, I don't even know how to handle this kind of pain right here. And so all I could think to do was to like practice my yoga breathing
Mm.
that I had learned. And I was like, okay, well, I put on like Deepak Chopra, and I was like, my husband calls him Tupac Chopra because he's always like rhyming at you. And so I was like, give me my phone, and I grabbed, I like typed in Deepak Chopra, and I put like a breathing meditation on, and I was like, okay, we're gonna breathe through this, and I'm gonna use that practice that I had so many times in yoga when I was like when my muscles were screaming at me because girl, like you were not supposed to be in that pose that
Mm-hmm.
long. And I
Mm-hmm.
had to breathe through the pain or the discomfort of that. I used that to kind of like calm me while I was headed to to the ER to get my ankle X-rayed so that I could get some pain. So when I think of spiritual practices in the basic reason why they exist, any of them, any of the ones that you use, whether it's, you know, very, very organized religion or very, very opposite of that, right? Just sporadic kind of connection with whatever source that you're in. The entire intention of them is to give us practice so that when we have to use it in real life, that it is available to be a coping mechanism for whatever we're dealing with, whether it's in the mind, in the body, or in the spirit. And so that's how I kind of like view yoga. Um, and so for my own practice in the mornings, maybe every mostly when I just feel like I need a little extra, I will put on some chakra tuning music. There's one that's like 20 minutes and you get through all the chakras. And
Mhm.
then I like breathe through a chakra at a time doing a sun salutation. And by the time I'm done with it, I've had my workout, I've had my meditation, I've cleared my brain, ready to work. 20 minutes in with all of the things. So that's typically how I do it in my little world.
I
Yes,
love
love
it.
it, love it, love it. And then yeah, you can say check, 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 and it just really sets a tone for the day, right? That you've accomplished that already, and putting that as the first thing that you do, it totally sets the tone of the day. And I find that too. I can do the same yoga routine or class, but my intention for doing it in the morning is different from my intention of doing it in the evening.
Yeah,
You know, it's the same class, but it's also the energy and intention I think that we bring to our practice. And for me, in the mornings, if I'm doing that, then I'm setting myself up. I'm kind of gathering myself for the day, finding my focus, just feeling settled and really strong in my being. And if I'm doing it in the evening, it's usually because I want to unwind and unburden and just let it all out, wring myself out, so to speak, so that I can sleep better, and just really practicing to that unburdening. And I love that last pose that you guys mentioned about the shavasana, because it's as soon as we get into that position, our body realizes that it's
Mhm.
it's rest time, right? So even just getting into that gesture, but I love it too because for me, I really feel it as a time of integration and just
yes,
allowing it all to come together, like you said, Monica, the mind, body, and spirit just coming together. And just I find integration so important because for me, I'm like, they call me energizer, right? Like I'm just going all the time and I'm going from one thing to the next thing to the next thing, and there's not a whole lot of time unless I make a conscious effort towards it to reflect and to integrate all the things that are happening, especially major transitions or just going from one thing to the next and not really landing and not really settling. And you're talking about being busy and integrating all the different things, Regina, and it made me think. People talk about what's the 20 that gets me 80, and sometimes that 20 is rest or yoga or some other kind of practice to get the 80,
yeah,
right? It may not be something that needs to be super focused on, but rather making time to kind of gather ourselves and set the tone and the intention and to rest a little bit so that we can get the 80, so it replenishes us. And that's why restorative yoga is my favorite yoga
uh,
practice. And
yes,
even getting the blocks and the strap and the bolster and the pillow, and it can seem like burdensome, like, oh, I got to get all of these things together and lay it out. But part of doing that, I feel it's a bit ritualistic in a way, like I'm gathering it, it's very intentional, I'm setting the space, and then it becomes like a sacred act, I find, and then I settle into that space. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer than others, but I really enjoy it once I get into it. And sometimes I feel too tired to do it, but I know that once I've done it, then it actually restores my energy. It doesn't make me more tired, it actually helps. So I really enjoy it as a practice too.
I love what you just said about the restorative yoga and getting all of the tools and everything, because just kind of playing off of that word practice. I
Mm.
use the word practice a lot, and um, because that is what we're doing. We're practicing how to show up, like Monica, what you said. When you were talking about that, I actually had an ankle injury as well. Mine was running, and I was by myself, and I had to get myself home.
Mhm.
And I was doing the same thing, was like breathing through it because I had to like walk on it. It was not a great situation, but it wasn't all the way broken. Um, but that practice, right? It's not always even just what happens once you get on the mat or once you get to the class or once you get into the, the poses and the breathing and all of that. The practice of just showing up for yourself, whether it's 5 minutes, whether it's 15 minutes, whether it's 2 hours, whatever it is you're practicing showing up for yourself. You're practicing, talk about self care, right? You're practicing um, being in a difficult, uncomfortable situation, right? Breathing through that or coming back into your clear mind, right? Because whether it's meditation, whether it's yoga, whatever the practice is, you are practicing for life. Um, one of my There's a book that I've read called Living Your Yoga, and I really love that book. Anyway, she talks about how you don't actually get the benefits. You get benefits of yoga on the mat, but it's in your life that you actually realize the benefits of it because you're living that state of being, you're living that state of mind, you're more flexible in your body. Yes, great, but you're also more flexible in your mind, you're more flexible with your temper, your emotions, your state of being, and so it's really just like a holistic benefit, I think, that you get from it.
Yeah, I have like a random question. That's not one of the two questions that we decided that had to be
Go for
answered.
it.
And the question is, so like, what was your experience the very, 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 very first time that you did yoga? Like, what was the scenario around it, and like, what were your thoughts immediately after?
Oh gosh.
While you guys think about that, I'll tell you. So
Yeah.
mine, I I was an athlete in high school. I ran track. I did volleyball. I was a cheerleader, and I was a dancer. And so lots of physical activities, right? And so I was like trying to round out my college credits. For you have to have so many units in order to be a full time student, and I was like, well, I'll just do like 3 PE classes so that I can kind of like keep the workouts going and also like be like a full time student. And one of them, I chose like a martial arts class. I chose like a weightlifting, weight training class, and I chose a yoga class, right? Because I like had this vision that I was going to become Kitana in like Mortal Kombat. It was going to be a whole thing. And so, and so I was like, yes, we're going to do it. So I'm like, I had no clue about yoga, right? It wasn't like it was super popular, like, as it is now. But I was like, okay, this is a stretching class, is what I was thinking. Just stretching. How hard can a stretching class be? So I get in the class and she's having us do all kinds of crazy poses that like are foreign to me at the time. And now, mind you, I like am an athlete, so like working out and like stamina and flexibility as a cheerleader and a dancer, like all of the components that you need to be good at yoga, I've already done separately. So this should be simple, right? When we got to that last pose, I don't think I made it to meditative state. I went right into deep, dark sleep. I
Mm.
was so happy to be there. I was like, this is the best 5 minute nap I've ever had in my life. I really needed this so bad. But it was like, it was such a moment where I was like, yeah, I underestimated the power of this. This is legitimately kind of not that easy. So what about you guys? What uh, Regina, you want to share your first yoga
You know,
experience?
I am racking my brain and I don't know. I cannot remember what my first yoga experience was. I keep thinking, like, I keep going back and I'm like, was that my first yoga experience? I honestly can't remember.
So
Um,
interesting.
I've been practicing for a long time and I can't remember when it was, but I can remember like early on. Um, I don't think it was the first time I'd ever gone, but I do remember going with my sister, my older sister, and she experiences spirituality in a different way than I do. I tend to be comfortable in most spiritual situations. Um, there are some on the very far more organized religion kind of situation that I'm not going to like tend to go there, but I have, spent a fair amount of time in church and church ceremonies with, with friends of mine. And it's a pretty comfortable place. I've also gone like way on the other side of the spectrum and, pretty comfortable in those situations too. But I sometimes forget that not everyone is. So my sister is, she is a spiritual person. She considers herself a spiritual person, and she though is more on the like right in the middle kind of like being a little less comfortable with the more spiritual yoga classes. Like she's more on the like I want to go and do this for fitness.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember going with her to, we were members of the YMCA at the time, and we went to this yoga class, but it was a Friday evening wind down. So kind of like Jennifer, what you were saying about, different times of the day. And there were like candles, and this was in the gym where we would go to work out. And so we'd just gone and like lifted weights and done some stuff. And then we went to this yoga class. And I remember getting in there and she was all like, okay, we're going to like, similar to what you just said, like we're going to stretch, we're going to do this stuff. And like, we're chanting and we're doing, all these things. And I remember her sitting like, just like looking so uncomfortable. And I'm all in my like bliss. And I looked over and I was like, oh, she's not comfortable with this. So yeah, I don't know. That's the experience that's coming to mind for me. But I just remember having this desire to know more. And I don't remember when it happened. I can't remember exactly the first class, but I remember as soon as I knew that yoga was a thing, I knew that I wanted to be there. And that's really like the best explanation I can give.
Very cool. What about you, Jennifer?
Mhm. Yeah, likewise. I'm not sure that I really remember the very first class, but I do remember early experiences of yoga. And it was also in the gym, which I don't think is the best conducive kind of environment to be doing yoga. And I was deep into my perfectionism patterns at that point. So, there's a pose that was mentioned and I was trying to get it right. I had to do everything perfectly or I wasn't going to get the benefit or it was going to be a disappointment to the teacher. And I was looking at what the pose was and looking at what my classmates were doing at the same time and then just trying to get it all right. So it wasn't very relaxing. There was no integration and burdening happening. I actually found it very stressful, but because of those patternings of having to get into the pose, and to get the ultimate benefit from that. And I'm not very I wouldn't not coordinated. What's the word? Like flexible or toned, and So then I was really down on myself. So it was actually kind of disempowering the whole thing. So by the time Shavasana came around, I was so relieved that
Like,
I could just lay
nailed
down.
it.
I'm like, okay, so that's over. I got through it. I didn't give up. But then I kept going back, because so there was obviously some benefit for it. And then I started to just let go and just let it be a practice and not care about trying to get everything right and just feeling into it, leaning into it more, and I think that's true for anything. If it's a new practice, if it's something new that we're just exploring, I think there is that kind of nervousness and wanting to get it right and get the full benefit from it. But then when you become more comfortable with it, you can just really relax into it, lean into it more, and then actually experience the benefit. So I'm glad I kept going back and then found other ways of being able to experience yoga in other environments and the different types like we talked about, and just finding what's right, being able to explore and be curious and just see what my body can actually do, so
Yes.
mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we could literally talk about this all day, especially the three of us. But we kind of have to bring this conversation to an end. It's already that time. So I really lightning round style. How can we get real with yoga as a part of our spiritual practice? So what is your like one kind of piece of advice on how to get real using yoga as a part of your spiritual practice?
I think just
Mhm.
do it, right? Like get
Mhm.
curious and try something, and then if you don't like it, try something else. It's a buffet to choose from. So that would be my advice is like get in there, get curious, see what works, see what doesn't.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah.
Jennifer?
For me, yeah, when I think spiritual wellness, I think of like soul care, and so I ask myself if I'm doing the yoga practice, just getting clear on why I'm doing it. Is it to feed my soul? Is it for integration or unburdening? And just being really intentional and having a conscious choice about it, not like following a trend, for example, or because everyone else is doing it, or I'm not spiritual if I don't do yoga, like I just want to be clear on why I'm doing it for me, what's the benefit, and making a conscious choice around that. And then just making it a practice, just like I said, leading into it and being intentional about it and creating the sacred space around it. So that's getting it real for me, just making
Yeah,
it
I
real.
think I think for me, I'm always about that like individual experience.
Hmm.
And just because something is suggested doesn't mean that you have to do it, right?
Hmm.
So at any point in your journey of
Yes.
trying anything anywhere, if at any point you feel like I don't like that, or that doesn't feel good to me, or doesn't feel good to my soul, then don't take the stuff that you like and keep it and use it often. And the stuff that you don't, discard it. Like it's not that important. No one's going to give you like a super duper badge for being like the most awesome yogi spiritual person in the world. The only thing that matters is how the practice is applicable in your own life. And so if your life is really hectic and you need something that like needs to calm you, then take the pieces that are calming. If your life is really like too low and you need to get boost up the energy, then take the pieces that give you more energy. Like use it to kind of like give you the edge on whatever it is happening in your life so that you can kind of unfold into the amazingly beautiful person that you are. But like, yeah, keep it real with yourself. Like,
Hmm.
and just know, like, if this doesn't feel good to me, I don't have to do it. That's probably the biggest piece for me.
Yeah, totally.
Look
Definitely.
at us. We did the first
Yay!
one.
Yay!
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 So much fun.
Yeah, it was.
So much
Thank
fun. I'm so
you.
glad I got to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being in on the game with us.
Absolutely. I'm always up for your game.
My little,
I know you're like, this one.
that's the comment. And this has been keeping it, getting real with the spiritual. That's what this is called. Getting real with the spiritual. We will see you next time.
Bye.